Climate change has impacted Africa in a range of different ways. Over 86% of African agriculture is rain-fed. That is not under irrigation system. This means that any modicum or significant variation in weather pattern, in rainfall pattern, can have an immediate knock-on effect on the production of agricultural produce. So in countries such as Malawi, but also in Kenya, in Nigeria, and in many other African countries, there has already been the impact in terms of the reduction in productivity and yield, which of course exacerbates the problem of food insecurity in Africa. In Nigeria in 2010, 2011, and 2012, there's massive unprecedented scale of flooding, which according to some projection resulted in the loss of up to 2% of Nigerians' GDP, and that's billions of US dollars. But also you see that with the sea level rise, a number of coastal communities in Africa are already beginning to be inundated. In fact, there are projections that a minimum rise in the sea level can result to about 30% loss of African cities. Cities like Lagos will, for example, be completely wiped out. And also there's a huge amount of infrastructure, oil infrastructure, diamond mining infrastructure that are located around the coast, which also will be completely devastated and destroyed with sea level rise.
When you look at the development status for Africa, it's quite low when you compare to the other continents. So it makes us very prone to climate effects. So having a green growth agenda, it's very key in terms of aligning our footsteps forward in enhancing our economic growth and enhancing climate resilience activities in the nation.
The term green growth, it is understood in different terms. Some call it green economy, some call it green growth, some call it inclusive, low carbon and resource efficient economy. But overall, it is about achieving an economic development that has a minimum impact on the environment and more positive contribution to protecting the environment, which is the foundation for any economic development.
We are having challenges in different areas arising from climate change. And the reason why we must embrace green growth is to avoid the mistakes that other industrialized continents have made, which mistakes are now negatively impacting on Africa. As you are aware, our contributions to greenhouse gases is just about 4%. But then the rest of the world produce and impose on us. So we do not want to contribute to this global damage. And that's why we want to go the way of green growth and make sure that we begin today to prepare for Africa's tomorrow.
Economies need to continue to grow, to expand, but that they can't do that at the expense of the environment, because we know that that has really detrimental impacts both on people but also on the continuing ability of the environment to provide the fundamental ecosystem services which are needed to support development going forward.
So late 2015, the UK government made available £1.5 billion a funding stream to support critical research around global challenges being faced by developing countries. On the back of that, the UK Economic and Social Research Council made a call for networks that can form around some of the critical challenges being faced by developing countries. So the Governing Inclusive Green Economic Growth in Africa is one of such network projects.
What GIGA tries to do is to look at the governance dimension of inclusive green growth in Africa. As you may know, a number of African countries are trying to make the transition towards more green and climate resilient economy as part of their broader national development activity. And GIGA is trying to look at what are the existing gaps and needs in terms of having an effective governance structure behind this effort at the national level.
A lot of what GIGA is doing is to try and explore what has been done and what needs to be done. So what GIGA has done is a thorough mapping work of the green growth agenda in the context of Africa. And here we're talking about academic work as well as work that is being done in government, in think tanks and elsewhere. And the idea is to synthesize and assemble all that information for those of us who are working in this field and to give us some material to work with.
Green growth is a concept that brings together sustainability and climate change issues. And then all the continent, all the countries in this world should embrace those two critical challenges we are all facing.
Africa is also perhaps the region which has the largest potential to leapfrog to a green economy that is more inclusive, resource efficient, and low carbon. Because of its underdevelopment, we are at the early stage of development. So if we manage to put our infrastructure on a sound basis in such a way that it can facilitate this inclusive, resource efficient, and low carbon economy, we'll be at the forefront of moving forward. So there is this leapfrogging potential. And this will be a global opportunity for the whole human community inside.
Actually, development, as has been done in the past, has not always benefited poorest people, and it certainly hasn't benefited the environment. So I think green growth gives this opportunity to really rethink those strategies and provide, the opportunity to use the technology that we now have available, but in ways that are going to bring those benefits.
Well, Africa is just beginning, if you will, its development trajectory. For example, its infrastructures are yet to be built. Most African economies are growing, but there is a need to try and explore, to try and chart out a pathway that is sustainable. Green Growth offers this organized to work around those issues.
Actually, one of the things that we're finding from this project is that a number of African countries are already embracing the concept of green growth. We have, for example, in Ethiopia, a very ambitious green growth strategy. We have in Rwanda an ambitious green growth strategy. We have the Nigerian government that have raised over 11 billion naira on green bonds. And in South Africa, there has been a trust, a financial fund that have been set up to fund green growth projects. And across the breadth and length of sub-Saharan Africa, you see a range of activities. In Malawi, a very innovative bioethanol project is going on there. In Ghana, the ACOBEM project, which rates and releases a report about how companies are doing in terms of environmental sustainability. And on I can go.
Here we have an opportunity with the COP and the climate conferences where we're trying to get a fast ratchet down to a 2 tons of carbon world within about 4 years. Africa's in a position to lead on that because it's already doing it. Other regions are using far more carbon and will have much more disturbance to their economy if they've got to ratchet down fast. So Africa becomes the leader in this. Africa's already doing it. So it's a magnificent opportunity for Africa to take that leadership in green growth.
GIGA has found that there are some progresses being made in the pilot countries that were looked at, but there are still significant gaps, both in terms of capacity gaps and institutional processes that need to be in place to have an effective transition in these countries.
Some of the huge barriers are around kind of institutional arrangements and the degree to which legal and policy infrastructures are able to actually make things happen.
Some people, because of their comfort position today, or how much money they are making today from their positions, they are resistant to changes in policy.
Green growth as a concept is new. There are no blueprints. So in a sense, whatever green growth strategy you have is very context specific. There is a serious deficit in human resources, and institutions. And those are the areas that, the soft areas of development are areas where there needs to be quite significant efforts. And so these are the real bottlenecks.
We are still locked in the conventional way of planning and implementation of development processes. And this transition requires a new approach, a new orientation, both in terms of institutional practices, procedures, and operational decision-making processes. So you have that, the need to overcome that institutional inertia. And of course, the other side is this transition requires a new set of skill and knowledge, which is not yet there. So you have to create those new set of skills and knowledge.
Fundamentally, because this is a new initiative, we need to, first of all, engage in capacity building. We need to support individuals and institutions to undertake research, to build their capacity, to invent, to build technologies, to undertake policy research, to influence policies at national levels and at regional levels, to mainstream these policies into existing national development plans so that it can become sustainable.
In order to really scale up green growth transformation in Africa, you need a huge amount of capacity building. And that is not always easy. There are technological challenges that need to be overcome. Green growth requires upfront investment, and politicians like to see a very quick return on investment in order to prove to the electorate that they are doing something. But to do green growth, you really need to think in long term.
Profit is oftentimes the motive behind any business investment. So if we are lucky to get people who truly want to support us without putting difficult conditions, we should be able to achieve our policy objectives.
I think the barriers very often are reluctance and nervousness on the part of the investment community to invest in knowledge and resources of new areas. And Africa's had underinvestment for many years. But because Africa's the future, has a lot of young people, it's going to be the way forward, it will have leadership. It's very important that the investors stop investing in perverse incentives of fossil fuel and actually move towards renewables and the new opportunities, automation, green jobs, and look towards the future, because Africa is where the future is.
Some of the most important challenges are around governance, and I think those are around issues such as democracy, around voice, around whose views, whose preferences, whose interests actually are addressed by green growth. They're around issues of inclusivity, so again, making sure that the benefits are shared amongst all people within communities, within societies.
There is a reasonably substantial literature in around 900 articles written on Giga. About half of those have been written by authors based in Africa, and the rest of them have been written by authors based outside of Africa, which tells you something about how African perspectives or researchers based in Africa's perspectives are not the sort of majority voice in writing about green growth in Africa.
The Giga initiative is helping to create awareness about how we can grow, how countries can develop sustainably.
There are many Western countries that have done green growth that Africa can learn from. The traditional pattern of growth across the world has been dirty growth and then clean up later. And now the world is asking Africa to do something that is incredibly challenging, innovative, without a template to borrow from. And so there are important challenges. But we are saying that when there is a will, there is a way. And that Africa should not give up, because actually green growth is the future for African transformational economic development.